This is Newsline. I am Michael Chigani. Tonight, should Hong Kong spend $44.5 billion on the Asian Games? With me is Eddie Chan. His job is to bring the Asian Games to Hong Kong in 2023. Now, Mr. Eddie Chan, you, as I said, you're the head of the so-called Asian Games bid team for Hong Kong. You're leading the effort to bring the 2023 Asian Games to Hong Kong. It's a long way off, but you're starting early. You have to bid for it early. Yes. We're talking here about staging the Games costing over $44 billion. That's a lot of money.
You're right, Michael, but the first thing that I must say is that it is not $44 billion. What we have been saying is that the direct cost of hosting the Asian Games is only $15 billion.
$15 billion.
$15 billion. And that is the direct cost that we need to spend
and what are the
to
indirect
host
costs?
The Games. Now, the indirect cost is about $30 billion, and of which $20 billion will be spent on a Kai-Tak multi-purpose sports complex, and that was being planned in the year 2006, and that has nothing to do with the Asian Games. The remaining $10 billion would then be spent on various redevelopment projects that we already have in mind, and whether or not we host the Asian Games, we would still be committed in spending that amount of resources in providing, the venues for the various districts.
So what you're saying is, whether we get the Asian Games or not, you're still going to spend around $35 billion on various sporting venues just for the use of local people.
Yes,
but surely, with the Asian Games in mind, you're actually pushing ahead with spending that extra money as well, right? If it wasn't for the Asian Games, you may have delayed the other projects.
Right, you're right. If we do not host the Asian Games, then obviously the time
you could even cancel it.
Would be longer. I mean,
right.
It would take us longer, to provide all those facilities that we have.
So, is it fair to separate the two?
I think it's better to separate the two because
it looks good for the numbers.
Because what we are saying is that if we are to host the Asian Games, then we need to spend, for example, $5 billion on the operating budget. Right? I mean, we need to provide various facilities like transportation, security, catering. We need to establish an organization.
There are a lot of hidden costs as well.
And that would be part of that $15 billion, right?
But okay, whether we're going to build sporting facilities anyway, with or without the Asian Games, for the Asian Games, we're going to spend $15 billion in today's dollar terms.
Yes, that's right.
It's not the same as 2023, okay, 2023.
No. We agree
that's going to go up.
Yes.
So that's number one. And then you never say we're going to spend $15 billion and then you stick to the budget. These things have a way of running away from you, right? Every other games. Look at the Guangzhou Games that are going to start next Friday. The amount of money they're spending is astronomical. Look at how much New Delhi spent on the Commonwealth Games. So you can't say $15 billion, that's it. It's going to go much higher.
Now, I think there are a number of points here. I think, first of all, we do accept that, costs will go up. What we are saying at the moment is that present-day prices, what we estimate it would cost Hong Kong would be that amount of money. So the first thing is that we would like to ask the Hong Kong community, at present-day prices, if we are going to host the Games, it would cost us about $15 billion. In addition to that, there would be an indirect cost, and that would be about $30 billion, okay? So with that amount of resources that we today are prepared to commit, would you be willing to support
You're asking
us?
The public that.
Right.
Tell me what...
If the public said that, okay, because we believe that there are intangible benefits that would be brought to Hong Kong, we believe that it would be good for the Hong Kong sports community for us to do so, then when we go to LegCo, and when we actually go to the Finance Committee, yes, we would then work out a very detailed estimation of the whole project, taking into consideration the current day prices and also the money of the day prices.
What is going. You give me a figure of 15 billion direct costs, current day prices. In 2023, what would the price be?
It's difficult for me to tell at this moment because as and when we've made a decision to go ahead with the bid, then we will go back and look at the whole projection of how
because
the economy is going.
Construction costs will go up.
Right, we agree
kinds
with
of
that.
costs
Yeah.
will go up.
I think we accept that, and I think as and when we go to LegCo or the Finance Committee, we will then have two sets of prices. One is on the current day prices, and the other one will be on the money of the day prices. So there will be a definite, a very clear picture of how we at this moment would project costs would
Well, you
go up.
seem very anxious and eager and excited about bringing the Asian Games to Hong Kong. But I want to ask you this, Mr. Chan. Do we really need it? Do we really need to stage the Asian Games in Hong Kong?
Well, I think, if you ask me personally, I think yes, because
Tell me why.
Hong Kong is a very advanced city, right? Okay, and if we look at all our surrounding cities, all our neighboring cities, most of them, have actually hosted the games. I think, and the question is, if we could do
But just because others have doesn't mean we have to.
No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that we have to do it because other cities have done it. But if we look at our city's own development, then I think we have the necessary facilities, we have the necessary qualities for us to do it. And the most important thing is actually not the games that we are talking about. The most important thing is that the Asian Games is just the vehicle that would actually help the government to somehow speed up the implementation of the various policy objectives in promoting sport. So I think this is
You can do that without having the Asian Games here.
Yes, we can certainly do that. But if we have a single objective within the next 13 years, then that makes a hell of a difference.
Tell me this. You say, okay, you try and promote sports, and if the Asian Games are brought here, and you've got 13 years to prepare for that, it'll generate interest in sports in Hong Kong, right? But others would argue, your critics would argue, 50 billion, 45 billion, 15 billion, whatever figure, price tag you put on it, that money can be put to better use.
Yes, but what we have been saying is that it is not an either-or situation. It is not, something that is exclusive for one item of expenditure. I mean, it doesn't mean that, if we spend that much money, in Asian Games, we cannot spend in other areas. I mean, we have 10
But
major
if you don't spend on the
infrastructure
Asian Games,
projects.
you can spend more on other areas.
Yes,
We've got a
you're right.
rich-poor gap in Hong Kong. We've got a housing problem in Hong Kong. We've got a lot of discontent in Hong Kong. We don't have enough colleges in Hong Kong. We don't have enough hospitals in Hong Kong. We are not putting enough into education. People are saying we should put more into education, help retirees, help elderly people. You can put all that in there.
Well, again, I'm saying that it's not something that, if we do the Asian Games, then we couldn't do any of the others that we
You can
want to do.
afford it.
I think, we could actually do both,
Okay, then tell me this. Before I go to the break, tell me this. You say there are tangible benefits in bringing the games here. What are the tangible benefits?
Well, I mean, the tangible benefits are actually, the benefits that would be brought to the economy, like having more business opportunities, like having more tourists coming over and spend their money here, and also creating job opportunities because of the construction
But this
projects.
will only last during the games. It's not long term, is it?
Right, yeah, it is a one-off benefit to the games. But again, if we look at the tangible benefits in a more longer-term manner, which means that if we spread it out a little bit, once we have the facilities available in Hong Kong, then we would be able to attract major or world-class events to Hong Kong after the Asian Games, or even before the Asian Games.
Is that happening in Beijing? They had the Olympics last year. Is that happening there?
Well, in my knowledge, I could quote Rio de Janeiro as an example. Rio, I think, hosted the Pan Am Games. I think it was in the year
Rio de Janeiro,
2006, yeah. And I think, in the 6 years preceding the Games, because of the availability of venues, they were able, to bring about 1,000 international sports events to the city. So I mean, you need to look at that aspect as well, you know. So it is very difficult for us to look at the tangible benefits that could be brought about by the Asian Games, you know, that during that 2-week period, and then make a decision to say that, you know, that is
but
not
this is the
really
problem, Mr. Chan.
significant.
It's difficult to see what the tangible benefits are, yet you can clearly see the tangible benefits if you use the money elsewhere on the many problems that I've mentioned earlier. If you put it in there, you see immediate tangible benefits.
Yes, I agree with you, but what I'm saying is, you know, I mean, it doesn't mean that if we spend $15 billion over the next 13 years on that Asian Games, then we would not be spending any money on the poor. I mean, if we look at, you know, the whole sum, we are talking about $15 billion, and we spend it over the next 13 years, then it would be, what, slightly 1-point-something billion on a yearly basis. And does that really mean that because we have committed 1-point-something billion on a yearly basis between now and 2023, then others would have to suffer? I don't think so. I would definitely think that, you know, other more worthwhile projects would definitely be going ahead at the same time as we commit, you know, the resources.
So the Hong Kong government has enough money to spend on the Asian Games and to deal with all the other problems. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
All right. Well, you know, we'll pick it up after the break. We'll go to the break now because I do want to ask you about public opinion in Hong Kong and whether the public supports bringing the Asian Games. We'll talk about that after the break. Don't go away.